All this week in the podcast, we are thinking about those big dreams and ambitions and those goals, specifically those times when we can't see the whole picture. So it started yesterday with the question, well, what do we do when that dream or that goal feels impossible? And I'm not going to repeat what I said yesterday, other than to say that we ended on the note, the reminder that God deals with those impossible feeling dreams. And we are going to talk about that a little bit more later in the week. But for today, if as a result of listening to yesterday's episode, you've decided that, yes, this dream or this goal really is important to me, then your very next step is to decide what the next step is. Because one of the problems, if we have these really big, important feeling missions, and lots of the people that I work with, they are making an impact in the world. And so I don't use that word mission lightly, but it feels really important. And when something feels really important, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And we want to know all of the details and have it all mapped out. When the reality is that isn't the precedent set in the Bible, and that isn't the precedent set, by lots of successful businesses either. So in the Bible, my favorite example, and this happened more than once, but I'm going to give you one example of when Moses and the people the children of Israel were getting ready to cross the Red Sea. And God had told Moses he was going to do this miracle. And the priests got into the water, stepped down into the riverbank, and God started separating the water. But what's interesting is he did that from the other side of the sea, right? So they're there paddling around, getting their feet wet while God is doing the miracle. And yet they can't see it yet, but they stepped out in faith. And so sometimes we have to take that first step. We have to get our feet wet. But you can't get your feet wet and take that first step until you know what the first step is. And so in practical terms, because I do love to mix, I like to inspire you, but I like to mix it with the practical as well. And so in practical terms, what I want you to think about, what is the very first step? Or if you're in the mire if it's a goal that you've already been working on a bit, what's your next step? Because this works both ways. So whether you're thick in the middle of it or not, or whether you're just waiting to get started, what is the next step? It might be a decision that you need to make. It might be an email you need to send. It might be something you need to write. It could be any number of things, but I want you to consider what is the very practical next step, and use a verb, an action word, an ing. I'm going to be writing. I'm going to be thinking, planning. What is the thing that you are going to do? It might be delegating. It might be that actually you don't need to do this next thing at all. You need to say to somebody else, right, here we are. I'm ready for you to do this thing. Whatever that next action is, I would encourage you to take it. Take that next step, because all of the evidence in the Bible points towards God moving and taking action when people do. And so sometimes you've got to step forward in faith and get your feet wet before you can see the miracle, before you can see God doing the thing that you really feel that he's called you to do. The example from the business world, there's in software development. Some of you may have heard me mention before my favorite notebook. It's called the Remarkable. And so I signed up and paid for my Remarkable before they'd ever made many. They did a few prototypes, but they released this software. I signed up for it in January 2017. It was finally shipped in October 2017, much anticipated, very excited, and I love it. I use it every single day. It is wonderful. But what's interesting is that along the way, they've been releasing software updates. So one of the updates they released was to make the battery life better. Another update they released was to allow you to export the things that you'd written in a different format. They had a really big update that when you wrote, it converted it into text. But what's interesting is that they didn't wait until they had the finished final, okay, we're all done singing and dancing. They actually wanted and needed people to be using this product, reporting the bugs, telling them which features they wanted, and they would then develop it as they went. And they're not the only company that do that. Lots of companies release beta products, or even when it's their main product, but they ship what's called a minimum viable product. I think it's Seth Godin made that phrase quite popular in business circles. Putting this project, this product, this service, whatever it is, putting it out there in the world, letting people get their hands on it, let it get dirty, and then fix it as you go and tweak and adjust it as you go. So there's, as well as those biblical examples, there are practical examples from the business world. And so for you, if that dream is feeling impossible, or that goal is feeling, just out of reach, I want you just to think, right, what's the next step? Because we do tend to think we have to have all the pieces in place, when the reality is that really isn't the precedent that's been set. It really is far better, and you'll actually end up with a better finished product as well. You know, when I first envisaged the Faith and Business Playground, I had this idea in mind. If at that point, and I I have to say, over the years when I've had different ideas, I know what it's like to rush ahead and create all the things, only to have to be reined back in a little bit, because you realize that you've made something that's completely different to what anybody else wants. So I do understand where you're coming from. But when I was given this vision of what the Faith and Business Playground could be, and two separate people said to me, look, you don't know what it's going to be yet. God is telling me you don't know what it's going to be yet. And as I've been moving forward, the picture of what that will be, the picture of what that will look like becomes clearer. But it only becomes clearer as I'm going out there and sharing and doing the work and tweaking and adjusting. And the same is true for you as well. So that's your piece of homework, if you like. Your next action step is to consider what is the very next step you need to take. And alongside that, are you falling into the realms of what we call scope creep? The phrase left me for a minute. Scope creep, where this thing is growing and growing and growing. No, get it out there, share it, let people use whatever it is this thing is that you are creating, and then tweak and adjust as you go. As ever, if you do have a project or a mission or something that you are working on that you know you would benefit from some support with, go to faithandbusinessplayground.com/talk to arrange a time. We can share virtual coffee and find out if I might be a good fit to help you with the head junk as you put that passion project out into the world. In the meantime, I shall be back tomorrow. As ever, thank you for listening. I wish you a delightful day. Take care. Bye-bye.